Shalom, my name is Joseph Shulam. I tried to record this teaching earlier, about 8.5 minutes into the teaching. Something happened with my internet and I couldn't record. Somebody tried to call me and somehow it disconnected the video. So I'm going to start over. I missed chapter 18 and jumped to 19, so I want to shortly repeat chapter 18 in the context. Chapter 17, Absalom wages a full rebellion against his father David. He amasses chariots and cavalry and tens of thousands of soldiers, and he marches on Jerusalem. David, his wives, and his closest friends and advisors run out of Jerusalem. And Absalom takes Jerusalem. David leaves only 10 of his concubines to guard the house, to guard the palace. Absalom publicly abuses sexually the 10 concubines and declares himself as king, and David is fleeing, and some of David's closer advisors are going out of Jerusalem with him, and others are cursing David and throwing rocks at him. David is not stupid. He manages to send back Tzadok and Abiathar, the priests, and several other people to join Absalom and enter into his confidence, because they had the Ark of the Covenant, and Absalom needed the Ark of the Covenant as an approval. And so they are now plants inside Absalom's confidence in Jerusalem, but they're on David's side. They are spies for David. It's a very, very interesting text. And now David is crossed the Jordan. He's got a small number of people with him. And now I arrive to chapter 18 of 2 Samuel, to verse 1. David mustered the troops who were with him and set over them captains of thousands and captains of hundreds. David sent out the troops, 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Joab's brother Abishai, the son of Tzruiah, and 1/3 under the command of Ittai the Gittite. And David said to the troops, I myself will march out with you. Let me stop here in verse 2. Ittai the Gittite is a Philistine that joined David when David was under the auspices of Achish, king of Gath. It's very significant, folks. Very, very significant that David had Uriah the Hittite, the husband of Bathsheba. He has Ittai the Gittite, the Philistine. So in David's confidence and in David's army and in his best friends, he's got non-Jews that protect him and on his side. I think that this is something we need to know. That David did not force these non-Jews to convert to Judaism, to Israel, to become Israelites. They remain Hittites and Gittites, and their whole tribes of non-Jews are on his side. Now David said, I'm going to go with you into battle. The troops replied, no. Verse 3, for it is some of us flee, the rest will not be concerned about us. Even half of us die, the others will not be concerned about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore, it is better for you to support us from the town. Stay home and support us from home. The king said to them, I will do whatever you think best. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the troops marched in front of him by the hundreds and by the thousands. The king gave order to Joab and to Abishai and to Ittai, to the three generals that are leading his forces, deal gently with my boy Absalom, for my own sake. All the troops heard the king give the order about Absalom to all the officers. The troops marched out into the open to confront the Israelites, and the battle was fought in the forest of Ephraim. The Israelite troops were routed by David's followers, and great slaughter took place. That day 20,000 men of the forces of Absalom died in the battle. The battle spread all over the whole region, and the forest devoured more troops than the sword. They stumbled in the forest. Absalom encountered some of David's followers. Absalom was riding on a mule, and as the mule passed under the tangled branches of a terebinth tree, his hair got caught in the terebinth. He was held between heaven and earth as the mule under him kept on going. We were told in the earlier chapter that Absalom's hair was very, very long, and it tells us how much the weight of his hair was. And he wouldn't cut his hair. It was beautiful. He probably put it in rollers with spray and, curled the hair. The prince, Absalom. So he got caught, his hair flying in the wind, while his mule is galloping in the forest. His hair gets caught on the terebinth branches, and he hangs between heaven and earth. One of the men saw it and told Joab, I have just seen Absalom hanging from the terebinth. Joab said to the man who told him, You saw it? Why didn't you kill him then and there? I would have owed you 10 shekel of silver and a belt. But the man answered Joab, Even if I had 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise a hand against the king's son, for the king charged you and Abishai and Ittai in our hearing. Watch over my boy Absalom for my sake. So the soldiers of Joab, the soldiers of King David, heard David say, Take care of my son, watch over my son. And the man says, If I betray myself and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have stood aloof. In other words, you would have abandoned me. Joab replied, Then I will not wait for you. He took 3 arrows in his hand, and drove them into Absalom's chest. Absalom was still alive in the thick growth of the terebinth when 10 of Joab's young arm-bearers closed in and struck at Absalom until he died. And Joab sounded the horn, and the troops gave up their pursuit of the Israelites, for Joab held the troops in check. In other words, he controlled the troops with the trumpet, with the shofar. They took Absalom and flung him into a large pit in the forest. They piled up a very great heap of stone over it. Then all the Israelites fled to their homes. Now Absalom, in his lifetime, had taken a pillar, which is in the valley of the kings, set up for himself. For he said, I have no son to keep my name alive. He had named the pillar after himself, and it has been called Absalom's monument to this day. Yad Absalom to this, and it exists until this day, folks, in the valley east of the walls of Jerusalem, east of the pinnacle of the temple, in the southeastern corner of the city of Jerusalem. Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, the priest, said, "Let me run and report to the king that the Lord has vindicated him against his enemies." But Joab said to him, "You shall not be one of the bearers of tidings today. You may bring tidings some other day, but you'll not bring any today, for the king's son is dead." Because Joab had a hand in killing him. He knew David, and he knew what David wanted, and he didn't want his son dead. But he did it anyway. And this is not the first time that Joab does this. He killed Abner, the son of Ner, the chief of staff, the general of King Saul, in the pool in Gibeon, not far from where we live. And Marsha and I remember going into the pool, that same pool where the battle between the men of Joab and the men of Abner ben Ner took place. It was kind of a competition, like a wrestling match, in which Joab took advantage of the situation and killed Abner ben Ner, King Saul's chief of staff. Joab said to the Cushite, Hushai Arki, one of David's faithful men, "Go tell the king what you have seen." And the Cushite bowed to Joab and ran off. Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, the priest, again said to Joab, "No matter what, tell me run to behind the Cushite." Joab asked, "Why should you run, my boy, when you have no news worth telling?" "I am going to run away." "Then run," he said to Ahimaaz, "run by the way of the plain." And he passed the Cushite. Ahimaaz passed the Cushite running. David was sitting between the two gates. The watchman on the roof of the gate walked over to the city wall. He looked up and saw men running along. And the watchman called down and told the king. And the king said, "If he is alone, he has news to report, as he has coming nearer." The watchman saw another man running, and he called out to the gatekeeper, "There is another man running along." And the king said, "The one too brings news." The watchman said, "I can see that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok." To which the king replied, "He is a good man, and he comes with good news." Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, "All is well." He bowed low with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be the Lord your God, who has delivered up a man who raised their hand against my lord the king." The king asked, "Is my boy Absalom safe?" And Ahimaaz answered, "I saw a large crowd when your majesty's servant Joab was sending your servant off, but I don't know what it was about." The king said, "Step aside. Stand over there." He stepped aside and waited. Just then the Cushite, Hushai Arki, in English you'd think that he's a black man, Cushite, but no, his name is Hushai Arki. He's not black. Came up, and the Cushite said, "Let my lord the king be informed that the Lord has vindicated, God has vindicated you today against all who rebelled against you." And the king asked Hushai, "Is my boy Absalom safe?" And Hushai replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rose against you to do you harm fare like the young men." That's the end of chapter 18. Now let me summarize it for a few minutes. We see three important things in this chapter, chapter 18. One is that David, even though he was old, even though he's been embarrassed, even though he's been cursed by some of his best friends and former best friends and advisors, even though he has experienced his son Absalom rebel against him, try to kill him, try to take over the kingdom, he still loves his son. And that's one thing we see all through the stories of David. He was a fighter, he was a man's man, but he was also a lover. He loved his children. He loved his children so much that he didn't discipline them. He didn't discipline Amnon when he found out that Amnon raped Tamar. It was a mistake. Had he disciplined Amnon, Absalom would not have killed Amnon, and Amnon would have been alive, and all this story wouldn't have happened. But it did happen. And David, there's one other thing about David. He will remember to the very end what Joab did to Absalom. And he will look for ways to repay Joab and Abishai, his brother, for participating in the killing of his son Absalom, even though Absalom was rebellious. Yes, sir, even though. So I did catch up with chapter 18, and I did chapter 19 already, and then the next time I will do chapter 20. God bless all of you. Keep reading, keep reading. It's very important you read for yourself and think about what's happening behind the scenes, not only what is written, but where is it coming from and what it means to us thousands of years later when we read these stories about the great hero David, how God anointed him to be the father of the Messiah, the messianic progenitor. Yes. So God bless all of you. And Shabbat Shalom. It's Friday evening here in Jerusalem. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Thank you. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your support, and thank you for standing with Israel. Thank you. God bless all of you.